Hey y'all, welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. It's Melissa, and we are here in the meat bird production barn for day 13 of the progress on our flock of 303 Cornish rock cross meat chickens. So we have waited until late in the evening to get day 13's progress because today was super hot and our birds were feeling the heat, and so we just checked on them throughout the day, but other than that stayed really out of the building and just left fan running, tried to manage the solar energy coming into the barn because we like to have our doors open, but then as the sun moves across the sky, that also lets a lot of sunlight stream into the building. So we talked actually in day 12 broilers video about some of the dynamics that impact the ambient temperature that the birds are feeling, and I mentioned 3 of them being the outdoor temperature, the body heat that the birds naturally produce themselves, as well as any heat coming off of the floor from the bedding trying to absorb the biological material that the birds put on it. And actually, in addition to that, another factor is sunlight, how much solar heat is hitting those birds and they're absorbing. And so as the afternoon goes on, the west side of our building, with being able to open up basically that entire side of that 30-foot span because we have 2 sets of carriage doors there, ton of natural light, sunlight streams into the building, and it heats it up more. So we have to close those doors up to block that sunlight from coming in, and that actually let it cool down. But we were way above 90 degrees today, September 4th, 2023. And by the way, Labor Day, happy Labor Day, Americans, and really hits close to home for us with agriculture, because I feel like farmers are some of the original American workers, and with Labor Day being a recognition and acknowledgement of the contribution of the American worker and the American workforce to the resiliency and determination and success of our country, the United States of America. It just, it's a day that means a lot to us. And actually, even we think of livestock production for the purpose of meat production, and including the poultry and the flocks that we raise, and there's all this coming down the pike with lab cultured meat, cell cultured meat. And we do these videos in part because we want people to know, hold on, I'm going to turn it around here. We want people to know this right here is how you get chicken. It comes from chickens, from real chickens. And this is how it's produced. It's produced on farms, big farms, small farms, or even in people's backyards for their household use. And it's produced from flocks of chickens, but always from real chickens. Those birds are getting around really good. I love seeing them move around and being active, but real chicken comes from real chickens. It doesn't come from a lab, it doesn't come from a bioreactor, it's not cultured from cells in a little dish. This is how we get chicken right here. We raise them and we feed them, and ideally we can use this hybrid, this Cornish rock cross meat chicken, and that produces the best chicken. But we are taking a look at this flock, I said, later in the day, because they were so hot today that we basically just early this morning, we made sure that their feeders were filled and water dispensers were filled, and so they had all that in there that they could utilize as the day went on at their own determination. And it was really hot, so we just wanted to be very minimal as far as anything stressing the birds out. And now it's cooled down to about 77 degrees, so they're probably really comfortable in their brooder, because with their own body heat and the floor heat, I'm sure it's a comfortable range for them, and we don't have a bunch of sunlight coming in heating them up, and it's just not as hot as it was earlier in the day. But also, in a shout out to a viewer actually in Kentucky, Conrad gave us a tip on being able to gauge if we've got males or females real early on in their growth by looking at the feather growth on the wings and on the tails, and so we're going to practice that and try to get good at that. But wanted to shout out a thank you to that viewer, to Conrad, for giving us a heads up on that, because that's one thing that's great about raising these birds. We've raised Cornish rock cross meat chickens for 4 years, and we've learned a lot, but we also learn new skills and new information with every flock that we start, grow, and finish. So I always appreciate somebody offering me some new knowledge. But as you can see, you know, we had a spell where the birds were up and moving around, and we have them going to food and going to water. We're really happy to see that. The heat did put them off of the water consumption slightly. We didn't have to add in as much water as we anticipated. One thing I've been wanting to show y'all about these water dispensers, I've stepped in the brooder, so that gets them moving around. We call it a brooder for about another day, and then I'm sort of in the habit of starting to call it a grower pen. But in these waters, I've been wanting to show you, if you use a water dispenser like this, we can actually see the water line out here on the outside of the bucket of water. And so if you just glance in at them, as that gets lower, like you can see the water line down here, but you need to really look in the tray to make sure there's water when it gets low like that, because if the water gets down below where it feeds down into that tray, you can actually still see some water in the bottom of that bucket with a water line, but them not have water down in their water tray. So if you use those kind of dispensers, make sure you're actually looking in the water tray to see if there's water. But here's a nice look of how the birds utilize the feeders. They really circle up when they're in that moment of going to eat. They really circle up around those feeder trays and go fill around that feeder. But we do, when it's not heat stress conditions, we actually come into the brooder pen or grower pen and walk amongst the birds and have them move around so that they exercise their legs a little bit, and that'll usually also send them to the feeders and to the waters. And so we do that frequently to make sure that they are going and consuming food and water. And so we'll let them drink these waters down a good bit, and then when they get closer to empty, you know, we'll clean those trays so that any sawdust that they've put in there, we can get that cleaned out of there. I really doubt that we're going to need to turn on any heat lamps tonight. We do have a fan running right now. We'll have to look at the forecast and see if it's supposed to get cooler, decide what to do about the fan. But for now, I think we're going to leave it on so that we can help the birds be cool. But I also wanted to mention before we finish this video that with the light, that's also a very important part of raising Cornish rock cross meat chickens successfully. They have a gland basically in their brain called the pineal gland, like most animals. But the pineal gland is very reactive to sunlight, and actually the birds take in and perceive sunlight through 3 ways: through the eyes, the skull, and the skin. So you actually could have a blind chicken that can still sense like when spring is coming, and sense when it's morning and when daylight is here, because even though maybe the chicken can't see, if it happens to be a blind one, it's still perceiving sunlight through those other mechanisms. And that activates the pineal gland in the chicken. And the pineal gland is sort of like a regulator that triggers or prompts the chicken to have a routine of eating, drinking, manuring, and then resting. And so I'm pretty sure I've probably said before with these birds, we want them utilizing that routine of eating, hydrating, doing their business, and resting on a regular cycle, and they seem to settle into that about every 4 hours. But that happens more naturally if we make sure that they're getting sunlight. So that's why we wanted to build that into our barn, and that's why chicken tractors usually work out really well as a way to raise meat chickens. So we are keeping up with our production board. I've got to update it because I still haven't got day 13 on here, and we're going to open up another bag of feed and put in because it's cool. And we have a wasp nest actually up above me. we can't really get a good view on it. But my husband treated it with some wasp eliminator, and we hope that that'll do the trick. So we are going to wrap this one up. It's still pretty warm for the birds, but they're really doing good. They made it through today really well and coped with the heat. We'd have loved to actually had that heat about a week ago, but we had it this week, and they got through it. So thanks for joining us. We pray for y'all to have a great week, and we hope you'll join us again. Thanks so much.